Erev Tov Renana. Good morning in Raleigh. Greetings to friends of Israel around the United States, around Israel, and around the world. My name's Wayne Firestone. I'm pleased to be with you. I want to wish everyone a meaningful Yom HaShoah. Our program today is dedicated to the commemoration of Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, which is celebrated in a very unique way. And we're so thrilled to be joined by a number of colleagues who have been working really with a project of love and passion and professionalism to bring this very special story to you in a film and to reflect on some of that film about the special community of Salonika. I want to invite every one of our live viewers to share in the chat if there is a name of an individual that you'd like to honor their memory, or a community, or even an educator or educational resource that has impacted you and your life in terms of really being able to understand and learn from the many lessons of the Holocaust. We want to give you that opportunity, and thank you so much for being here today to again be a virtual community coming together from different parts of the world. I see people from Melbourne, Australia, people from Brooklyn, from Ibiza, from Northern California, from Boston. We truly are a global community, Princeton, New Jersey. And in many respects, one of the things we've learned over the past couple of years of COVID is both the need for and the ability for us to come together as virtual communities with friends and allies of Israel from around the world in very unique ways. So hello, Philadelphia. Hello, Los Angeles. Hello, Jerusalem. We're grateful that everyone is here today. Even a shout out of bonjour from Paris. So I'd like to turn over now to Tel Aviv, to my dear friend and colleague, Ruby Shamir, who will share with us some reflections just on Yom HaShoah coming from Israel, and introduce our first speaker, as well as a clip from a very important film that we're so pleased to be able to share with you today, and the story behind the story afterwards in my discussion with some really outstanding panelists. Ruby?
Thank you, Wayne. Oh, thank you. I will introduce you to this webinar on the movie Heroes of Salonika. This is an important documentary on a population who go to Auschwitz, and above all difficulties has special difficulties because they didn't speak Yiddish and therefore didn't understand the Germans. I would like to specially recognize here Professor Gideon Greif, an expert on the Holocaust specializing on Auschwitz, who will put light on the Salonika Jewish community in Auschwitz. From a personal perspective, I got acquainted with the Salonika Holocaust when over 30 years ago, working at Tel Aviv University, we inaugurated the chair of Salonika and the history and culture of the Jewish population, the Jewish people in Greece, established by Engineer Russo and Professor Ancori. This is very special, and as an Israeli, this is a special evening commemorating the Holocaust in Israel, growing the second generation with friends that their parents survived the Holocaust. And Wayne, I would like to turn back to you to conduct this webinar. Thank you.
Well, we're really delighted today that we have experts from Israel that have helped to tell the stories in different ways. And indeed, we're going to start with Professor Gideon Greif, to give us some of the historical background to this story, a professor from Ono College. And Professor Greif, please, perhaps if you could share a little bit of the background about the community and your involvement with this film project.
Thank you very much. It's a big honor for me to be here with such distinguished scholars, film director Yigal Pomeranz, producer Sol Levy, and all the very distinguished guests and friends. The first year, or the beginning of my connection, so to say, to Greek Jews took place in 1988 when I initiated the big project Salonika Auschwitz, which was a radio broadcast in Galei Tzahal, Israel military radio broadcast station, which won a very prestigious prize, where I tried to reconstruct the life of Jews in Salonika before the war, during the German occupation, and on their tragic way to Auschwitz and all what happened to them there, all this miserable fate of this unique and wonderful community of Greek Jews. And since 1988, I'm very much in contact with Greek Jews. And I would like to say you one sentence which accompanies me always. If all this would be only a nightmare and all the thousands of Greek Jews would still be alive with us, I'm confident that our world would be much, much, much better, much, much better, knowing the special nature, personality, noble way of behavior of Greek Jews. It's such a big loss to all of us, to the whole world, not only to the Jewish people. Shall I elaborate more on Greek Jews in Auschwitz, or shall I do it later?
Why don't we, I know we have a film segment that will give a bit of an understanding of the film now for everyone. And I think that might be a good starting point for the panel. And unless there's anything specific, Professor Greif, that you wanted to mention about the film itself.
The film itself is a real great documentary, You have to understand and take into consideration that the fate of Greek Jews was for many, many years neglected. Yes, neglected for very strange reasons. Not only people have to be lucky, also historical periods sometimes have to be lucky, and Greek Jews were unlucky. And thanks God that such initiatives of Yigal and Sol can be realized, because they deserve it. Greek Jews deserve to be mentioned. We have to tell their stories on and on and on. They can't talk now. We have to be their voice, we have to be their echo. And this film, this excellent, wonderful film, gives the voice back to the Greek Jews. And we have to talk not only about Polish, French, Italian Jews, we have to talk day and night about the miserable fate of Greek Jews during the German occupation, and especially in Auschwitz, where most of them were gassed in the gas chambers of Auschwitz and Birkenau.
Well, thanks so much for that introduction, and indeed what is really a team effort. We're going to go now just so everyone can get a taste of the film, and I promise you later we're going to give you more details on how you can see the full film and be in contact with this wonderful project. But now, just so we're all sort of have a sense of it, we're going to play an excerpt, and then followed by a little bit more of the behind the scenes of the putting together of this story with the people who are most intimately involved in that. So we'll now go ahead and play the clip.
הייתה לי תקווה שאני יוצא, או אפילו ידעתי שאני יוצא מהמחנות. ידעתי שאני הולך לצאת חי מזה.
רק לראות את ההורים. אני לא מאמין שיהרגו אותם. רציתי לחיות בשביל לראות אותם.
לא הייתה לי מטרה. המטרה שלי זה היה לעבור כל יום ויום. אם אני אחיה או לא אחיה.
אם אני לא הייתי גונב, מרביץ לחלשים, וגם רוצח, אני לא הייתי שורד. אני רציתי לשרוד כדי לספר לעולם מה שאנחנו עברנו.
The more I suffered, the more I took an oath that I have to tell everything. If I was ever saved and liberated.
פקודי המשכן, משכן העדות, אשר פוקד על פי משה, עבודת הלווים ביד איתמר, בן אהרון הכהן.
Spring of 1941. A year and a half after the outbreak of World War II. With most of Europe already under its control, the German army invades Greece. A few days later, the city of Salonika is conquered. Educational institutions and Jewish newspapers close, but the residents of the city, including the Jews, are told to continue with their normal lives.
באמצע הלילה, כן, כלבים, נביחות, פרוז'קטורים ורמקולים ופה ושם. אז אמרו, נשים וילדים מצד אחד וגברים מצד שני. מנגלה. הוא היה בודק אותך גופנית. אז אחי אמר לו, תלך ימינה, אותי ראה צ'ימוק כזה, לך שמאלה עם האנשים וילדים פה ושם. המרחק היה משהו כמו 20 מטר. פתאום אחי אומר לי, תגידי, אתה לא יכול ללכת 3 קילומטר ברגל? אמרתי, כן. אז אני ברחתי מהצד הזה, אחריו בדיוק.
הפשטנו את היד, ככה. היה לוקח את המחט האדום, שם היו 2-3 מחטים. לקח את האחד, נגע באבק, והוא עשה. שם עוד פעם אבק.
אני קיבלתי 137-142, כאשר אחי 147-141. הנה, זה המספר שלי.
מי היה יכול לחשוב? למחרת בבוקר, אז הבומבה, הפצצה. הדבר הראשון שיצאנו בבוקר, אפילו שלא ישנו, איפה אמא, אבא והאחיות? אונסטה מאמה, אונסטה פאפה. מאיפה הם? לא ידענו. פתאום, מי בא? פולונים, יהודים. עכשיו, האחד אומר לשני, אריש כאן ייד. ביידיש, הוא לא יהודי, אלה שבאו פה. כאן יש יידיש. אשפרח נש יידיש. אריש כאן ייד. שמע, אנחנו לא מבין. מה הוא אומר? מה? אבא, מאמה. או בבא, פאפה. מאמה, בשפה להגיד להם, ריבונו, אמרנו פאפה, מאמה, אז התחילו לצחוק. הוא מראה.
The smell was not good. You immediately felt that when it was low atmosphere, you smelled burnt flesh. It came like rain falling from the sky with only stars, and then there was a rain. There were the flakes, and the flakes was the bodies.
בראש השנה הייתי עוד פעם בבית חולים, ואז עשו סלקציה, באו גרמנים, הסתכלו רק ליהודים, אמרו כנוס בפינת הטיפולים, והיו למששים, מסתכלים וכו', ושמים את הכרטיס, או בערימה אחת או באחת, או באחרת. ידענו שהערימה אחת זה של אלה שהולכים להרוג אותם, והערימה השנייה זה אלה שבינתיים ישאירו אותם חיים. ובדיוק בליל יום כיפור, באו ואמרו, עכשיו נקרא מספרים שאתה שמה, שומע מספר אחד, זה לא המספר שלך, אולי לרבע שנייה אתה נושם, אבל אתה לא יודע מה יהיה המספר הבא. ועובדה היא שאת המספר שלי לא קראו באותו המעמד. והיו אנשים שהיו יותר חזקים ממני להערכתי, ואותם בכל זאת לקחו. אצבע אלוהים, מה שנקרא.
היית מתפללת לאלוהים?
לא, גם עכשיו לא. תסלח לי שאני אומרת, אתה אדם דתי. הוא לקח לי את היקר. הוא לקח לי את אמא, לקח לי את האחים. למה? אמא שלי הייתה שומרת. מה ילדה בת 10 אשמה? מה ילד בן 7 אשם? מה תינוקת בת 1.5 שנה אשמה?
אין אף אחד. לא יכול להיות שיש מישהו וראה את הדברים האלו, את המשרפות, את מה שאנחנו סובלים. למה? מה עשינו? מה עשינו בבית? לא היינו מכבדים אותו, לא היינו הולכים לבית הכנסת, לא היינו אוכלים כשר בבית. מה? למה?
I was lying in the block, completely exhausted. I said, finished. I heard voices. My friend who could walk still, she said, wake up, stand up. It was not night, it was day. Come, we go to the main place. The Americans are coming. Help me. I could not move, could not stand. Please help me. So two of those people took me to see the Americans. After several hours, waiting the Americans, the main place, we hear the tanks rumbling. One Sherman tank, nothing else. Came before the door, he saw the camp, he put it bombs, the whole door down. He entered there, he saw left, he saw right, he saw people that standed like that, who were like a finger.
כולם רצים, נוגעים בטנק, רוצים להיות בטוח שזה טנק. ובין 3 הטנקים שנכנסו, אחד היה עם דגל יוון קטן כזה, על האנטנה. כל הקבוצות הצרפתים התרכזו ביחד, פולנים ביחד, רוסים, כל אחד ספרדים, ושרים ושמחים, כל אחד שר את ההמנון של הארץ שלו.
Unfortunately, those Jews that returned from the camp, the worst thing was they did not want to speak. And I told them, speak, tell your story. How will the world know about what happened to you? You have to speak.
Well, we just got a little taste from the film by way of introduction. So powerful to hear directly the testimony of the survivors and to have the context of both the destruction and the liberation by the armed forces. And really, we're so privileged today to hear about how the film was made, why the film was made, how this story has impacted on the survivors themselves. So I'm going to start with Yigal Pomerantz, who is both the producer and assistant director on the film. He's a lecturer at Hadassah College and indeed has helped us put together all this wonderful group of people today to be on the webinar. We're so grateful for that. Yigal, this has really been a passion for you for now many years. And I wonder if you could just take us to the origins of the film project and what motivated you to sort of see this as a story that needed to be told on film at this time before it was too late to not tell the story.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was 7 years ago, before 7 years ago, that I became very inspired to make this film. I have to point out that I never studied filming, but since I'm a child, I would always watch films and I would always like analyze them. And I always had an interest in filming, but I never imagined to myself that I would actually create a film or films. That's quite amazing that I was able to have the privilege to actually do that. So what inspired me to create this film was, first of all, the fact that I felt that I don't understand really the Holocaust experience, and I felt that just about everybody around me doesn't really understand the experience. All we know from the camps is that millions of Jews were taken to these labor camps or these death camps, concentration camps, that millions of Jews were killed, were gassed in most of those camps. But to really understand the experience, it was more like a myth. It's like something terrible happened to them, but really, what is the human experience, of living in these camps, and how did they actually survive? The minority, these few that survived, how did they actually do it? So that was initially something that really was important for me to explore, to understand. And when I came across the story of the Salonika Jews, I realized that they're a unique story, the largest Sephardi community in really in the world that was eliminated, that was killed in the Holocaust. But their story was really not known to the Israeli public or the Jewish or even the Jewish world, and in general, despite the fact that their story is so unique and that they were a relatively large community in Greece. So that was the initial. That's how I got interested in the story, and I was inspired. I met amazing people, amazing interviewees. And it was amazing. It was in a very spontaneous way. I became acquainted with them, and I got their consent, and that's how the film began rolling. I definitely had a lot of obstacles, difficulties that I had to deal with. For example, from somebody who did not come from a background of filming, I had to raise funds to begin the project. That wasn't easy. But I was very, very inspired, and I knew that I have a unique story that was not told. So that was really a reason, for some people, to contribute and to help me get the story rolling. there were many obstacles that I had to overcome to get this story done. But I have to say that it's like from God, really. It's like so many things happened that were not logical. It was like God was helping me. He was like, literally, it's like a call. He was like telling me, go out and tell their story to the world. It's very important. They should not be forgotten. They should be remembered. And I was very lucky to find Tom Barkai, the film director, Sol Levy, who came with an open heart and was willing to assist greatly and sponsor the film at the beginning and also through the film. And Professor Graef, you know, the film advisor, and so on and so forth. So many good people, you know, that helped me put together this really moving and unique film.
Well, I can tell you that the responses in the chat that I'm reading are really a testament to the impact of the film on the larger audience. Because as you said, Yigal, a lot of this story is just simply not known. There are so many stories in the Holocaust, so many communities. I've read a lot about Auschwitz. That was the first time that I saw the reference to the singing of the national anthems and the groupings of different prisoners afterwards in that way. And each sort of bissel of knowledge that we get from this really is sort of an incredibly valuable both testament to the past and also just sort of the legacy of the communities, which I'd like to return to when we get to the questions afterwards. But let me take the story now. Let's move to Tom Barkai, who you briefly introduced. He is a professional film director and a graduate of the Film and Television School at Hadassah College. Tom, when you looked at this through your lens as a filmmaker, what initially attracted you to the story, and now, you know, looking back on the finished product, you know, what did you learn about it that you know sort of surprised you, or that you only learned, you know, as afterwards?
Your question is kind of touching many issues together. I think the thing that most touched me in the beginning is just so these people, how the way they talk, because they talk with a lot of passion, and they seem like they don't when they have things to say, they say their heart, they talk their heart, they talk simply and simple and full of passion and you kind of like them just the way they talk. And then there was like many testimonies, and we have to give a lot of concern how to weave together all these stories, because in a general we tried to bring a story of community, and there was like 6 different stories of 6 different persons, and each go through different phase through their childhood, and then the camps, and then survival and all that, and we have to kind of mix together. And I think when you see the movie, you can't really follow who said what and what happened to whom, but you get the notion of that big community that went through phases, like the beginning, that very happy childhood for most of them, and very vibrant community in Saloniki, and then the invasion of the German forces, and then going through the trains, and the story kind of built itself as if one person would have told saying it, and I think we had the luck to find like different angles through their stories, and each one went through different phases. And also, if I one of the things that was really interesting for me, and also for Yigal, is the thing that what is the thing that helped these people to survive. And there's a lot of talking about belief, about trusting God, or the other way around, just saying no God, nobody there. And I think somehow both of these things come to the same consequences of really enormous power of mental power to continue through all these phases of almost being dead, almost execute day by day. And if I go to the end of your question, I think that's the thing that most touched me when I think about like how it would be for me if I was there, and what are actually what is the profile of somebody who can go through all that and stay alive, and another thing, stay like mentally healthy and doing other things afterwards. And I think that was the most interesting for me, to see that those people get out of the camps and make a career in like in the army or in the Shabak and Mossad or and do things for the state, and not going crazy or something like that. This is like it's like a miracle, and connected to the thing about belief, that it don't really matter if you kind of trust God or the other way around, but if you have some kind of strong belief that keep you, and you can go through a lot, and that's most interesting for me.
Well, Saul Levy, you've invested time, money, research to make this thing happen. I'm going to ask you a business question. What was your return? What do you see as your return on that investment? Now that we have a final product and you're seeing the kind of reactions of people from around the world to this incredible story.
Thank you, Wayne. It's certainly not a financial return, that's for sure. I mean, when I went into this project and Yigal came to me with the idea, I said to myself, is this going to have a good positive effect on people or not? That's all I cared about. In fact, I had real doubts about doing the project, because I remember debating educators many years ago and saying that there's too much Holocaust education and maybe it's having a negative effect on the younger generation, especially those who are outside Israel and those who don't have a religious background. I actually saw very big dangers in Holocaust stories, Holocaust films. But ultimately, I was convinced that there was a good story to tell, and it had uplifting messages amongst all of the grief. My background was originally in banking and real estate, not filmmaking, although I know a good film when I see one. And years ago, Yigal came to me. Yigal and I are friends for many years. He said to me, there's this amazing story about Salonika Jewry and the Holocaust. I wasn't convinced, but he said, I want to make the filming. I want to film testimonies, but the survivors are now 90 years old, and it's not going to be long in this world. So I supported him. I said, go ahead and make the film, film the raw material. And I think there was maybe over 20 hours or maybe much more of footage. And we'll talk about whether we should make a film later or whether I'll help you with that. Ultimately, I did come to a conclusion that it was a worthwhile project to do. But I always had doubts in my mind as to the possible negative effects of Holocaust, another Holocaust film. I have to say that the film did end up being a very quality production. It was a superb team, and the result justified undertaking this project. Filmmaking was new for Yigal, and it was new for me, and it's quite intensive, and the amount of work involved, especially around budgeting, planning, getting funding, even the on-site filming in Greece. It was a very intense few days with a team of 7 people, and Professor Greif was one of the team with us, and together with Moshe Elion and his daughter. He's one of the survivors, and to get everything done in a few days under the stress of making sure things don't go wrong and we don't run out of time. Quite an expensive mini project in itself. Salonika, I was ultimately convinced by a number of things. One is the positive messages that came out, also for the fact that the Greek Jewry was not well represented in historical films compared to, for example, Polish or Ukrainian Jews who suffered enormously in terms of numbers. But Salonika was a community of Sephardi Jews, and the main Sephardi community that suffered during the war. And it's a gripping film in the way it was put together and the way the narration flows. So, you know, I'm ultimately satisfied that we did produce something that was worthwhile, that's going to stand the test of time, that's going to be educational and hopefully also inspirational. I just want to give you a little bit of a short philosophy of mine, which is that the Holocaust seems to many people to be different from other parts of our Jewish history, but I don't see it that way. I see it as being a very recent tragedy, and it feels different for that reason. And we all have family and friends who have relatives who suffered and perished. But if you look back through long thousands of years of Jewish history, there are many tragedies in the past, many ups and downs. Only with the passage of time can you put that into perspective. I think in time, Holocaust will be put into perspective in the ways that other tragedies of the past have put into perspective. But I also feel that, you know, after the Holocaust came an enormous renaissance in Jewish life and the life of the Jewish people and establishment of Israel. And we live in a great time where we can see the enormous progress that as a people we have made since the Holocaust. Turn back to you, Wayne.
Well, really, indeed, it is amazing, the power of a story. And as you said, Saul, sometimes, I mean, you know when you've seen a good film, you know when you've heard a good story. And the good here is measured in a lot of different ways, right? Tom refers to the passion that you hear in the voices of this community that were captured in the film, and that itself, it's not just about numbers. It's not just about, you know, there are so many different nuances to it. It's about language. It's about culture. It's about religion. It's about the incredibly challenging theological and religious questions that, you know, different survivors came out on different sides of that you already captured in the film. And Saul, you mentioned that one of the critical testimonies in the film comes from Moshe HaLeon, who is still alive and is we were hoping we'd be able to get him on the webinar, but it didn't work out to get him live. But we do have some of the interview clips with him, which are very powerful. And so I think before we move to the many questions that are already popping up from the audience, why don't we run just it's a short string of clips from interview with him, and we'll use that as a departure point for the rest of the questions. So we'll go ahead and cue those up.
We know why the families are in Birkenau. So, well, you are in Birkenau. You see my mother, my sister. He looked me. No, I have not seen them. So it's a great place. Well, no, it's not a great place, but I could not see them. Why? Then he took me in the corner of a block in Auschwitz. Outside Auschwitz is a crematorium. Exists until now. He said me, you see this building? This is a crematorium. They burn.
They are burning the bodies.
The bodies, the dead body. And they tell me in Birkenau, there are 4 such buildings. and
Gas chambers.
and they had kids with family. I told him. So I'm crazy. So they killed people. The Germans, people, civilized people. He tells me, if you want, believe me. If you don't want, don't believe me. I couldn't understand that. Then, after he told me also some other things, I was convinced that I was speaking the truth. I went to my blog. I lied in bed and I cried. This is the only thing that I could do.
Moshe, why do you think that you survived?
What?
Why do you think you survived?
I don't think. Well, I don't know, and I don't say why. The only thing perhaps I can say is the God's will. The God's will. The God's and
Despite of everything.
In spite of all the things I suffered in the camps, I believe to God until today.
Wow.
Well, thanks for sharing a little bit of the spirit of resilience, to remember precise details, to share that. The testimony of survivors is just so powerful and so important. It still then needs to be put into some historical context. Obviously, Professor Greif, as you know, what are the pieces of the experience of the community, you know, that you were able to preserve or learn about from Auschwitz, and then what continued? You know, like what of the small number of people who actually survived, what was able to find in the small number of the communities a way to continue in some way with the small community that remained behind, and others that obviously that moved to Israel and elsewhere?
Thank you. I would like to talk about the uniqueness of the Greek Jews in Auschwitz. They were, in fact, a separated group. You know, all Jews who were imprisoned in Auschwitz, I'm not talking about those who went directly to the gas chambers, those who were selected to be slaves, all of them suffered, but Greek Jews suffered even more because of subjective and objective reasons. Let me give you some examples. For instance, the language, the linguistic problem. Greek Jews spoke Ladino or Greek. They didn't speak Yiddish, they didn't speak Polish, they didn't speak German. It's a big problem in Auschwitz. Then differences of mentality. They were so different from Jews from Central and Eastern Europe. Then the weather. They were not used for such weather, such cold temperature. At that time, the world wasn't so hot as it is today, -30, -40 centigrade. And in addition, the hard work the Germans gave to them to work in Buna Monowitz, a sub-camp of Auschwitz, where they had to work like slaves day and night, being part of the Sonderkommando, the worst of tasks that the prisoner ever had in history, to work in coal mines, etc., etc. So if you collect all those reasons, you see how unique the fate of Greek Jews in Auschwitz was. And despite all of this, they were so loyal to each other. They had such solidarity, which is really envious. No other community was so loyal one to the other. If one Greek Jew was hungry, the other Jew would give him something to eat. Even he himself would die out of hunger. So we see a lot of characteristics of Greek Jews who suffered. And unfortunately, I have to add one more thing, which is really unpleasant, but I have to do it. even other Jews behaved not so nicely to Greek Jews in Auschwitz. And this is really saddening when you read testimonies about the humiliation of Greek Jews by Germans and by others.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to tell you what was the most sad sight I have experienced when I visited for the first time Salonika about 15 years ago. I went to the only synagogue which is still functioning, and I saw there 10 old women dressed with black, sitting there on the left side hand. All of them had a number tattooed on their left arm. It was such a surrealistic picture, which symbolized the destruction of that beautiful, excellent community. It was so sad. I wept half a day after, if not the whole day. This is my answer to your question.
It's really quite a testament to that historical research that you did.
Can I add one more sentence, please?
Please, yeah.
When I'm visiting Salonika nowadays from time to time, it's a very young city. You see young people walking there, many people. And always when I see them, I become so sad because I'm thinking, do these people walking nowadays into Salonika, happy, wealthy, do they know that just 80 or 90 years ago on the same place, other people were walking and they are not alive anymore? Not that they moved to another city or another country. They were murdered, brutally murdered. Do they know it? I doubt it.
First of all, thanks for addressing the issue of the language, because we had several people ask about Ladino, and certainly in the film, the consequences of not understanding and speaking Yiddish, both as it related to the Nazis, but as you were beginning to describe it in a very nuanced way, also among the other Jewish communities there, how that became a barrier and potentially a form of additional isolation and humiliation of the community that's part of this. Saul, I know you have some thoughts about how the community sort of has evolved and where they are today. Perhaps you could share a little bit about that as well.
Sorry, Wayne, in the context of what?
In the context of assimilation.
Okay. I commented at the beginning that I had a fear about the film was, is it going to have a good effect on people? I don't want to make a film just to entertain. I want to make a film that has a positive effect on people's lives. And as a religious Jew, I want to do something that inspires people. It helps Jewish cohesiveness and our future. I think without Jewish education from a rather young age, you're already starting with a very big disadvantage. So my two solutions to assimilation, and one is better than the other, is fundamentally Jewish education is the very best solution, and really from an early age. And a wide type of education, not just religious texts, but our history, our glorious history, and our prophesied glorious future as well. And the other side to counter assimilation is the practical matter of living in a Jewish society, which means the imperfect and developing nation of Israel. And that's definitely work in progress, a lot of flaws and faults, and a lot of things need to be fixed. But it gives you like a family to live in, even if you are not religious. So I always like to promote the education side of that, but living in Israel also helps. If you don't have a Jewish education and you live in a comfortable society like maybe United States of America, it's extremely easy to assimilate and disappear. And I know that through many friends and even through cousins of mine, without the education from an early age, and as soon as you can start, you've got difficulties. And that's a major source of assimilation.
Yigal, we had a couple of questions about the Greek Jewish community, both in Israel and in the United States. Have you been able to, first of all, do you know if they've seen the film and what kind of reactions you have from them? And I don't know if you know anything about the size and the demographics of those communities, we had a couple questions about that as well.
So I can say about your first question is that in 2019, the film was broadcasted on Keshet 12, which is like a primary Israeli TV channel, on the eve of Yom HaShoah, and approximately 300,000 Israelis watched the film. And of course, many Greek survivors and their families watched the film, so it had a great impact, definitely in Israel, on Israeli society. The film was also publicized in newspapers, Jewish newspapers around the world. So I can imagine that many Jews also worldwide heard about the film. And the film hasn't reached yet the large audiences that I would hope and expect it to reach. But God willing, in a short while, it will be available on a website for anybody and everybody to watch it. And it's translated to 5 languages as well. Now, regarding your second question about demographics, I think perhaps Professor Gidon Greif could answer better than me on that, please.
Can you repeat the question, please? So I can
Yeah, Professor Greif, do you have a sense, one of the audience members wanted to know about the size of the Greek Jewish community, both in Israel and in the United States, if you have any sense of how large those communities are.
I'm sorry, I'm not equipped with the current data, but one data is engraved in my memory, and this is the number of Greek Jews who came back from Auschwitz alive, and the number is very small, 2,000 Jews, that's all. And these are the remnants of a huge Jewish community. We should not forget that the Jews of Salonika were more than 70% of the town's population. It was a Jewish town. And this also makes the tragedy so big, so immense. 70+% of the Salonika town were Jews, and they were so active in every field of life, of daily life. Not many cities in the world were so Jewish like Salonika.
Tom, I wanted to ask you about the soundtrack and the music, which evokes some of the richness of Greek culture. And I know Israelis sort of encountered some of that culture initially with Yehuda Polacker, and the beginning of sort of an understanding that there was this incredibly rich Greek tradition, Greek Jewish community that just sort of emerged from the ashes, and that beautiful community needed to be heard and seen and felt. And in what ways were you able in the film, beyond the destruction, to document that allowed for some continuity of that beautiful Greek tradition?
In the film, we try to mix there is music that was written especially for the movie with a musician called Boaz Shori, who wrote especially soundtrack for all the film. But in addition to that, we try to touch some there is a part when people talk about their voyage with the train to Auschwitz, and then the soundtrack is, you can hear like a singer who sing in Ladino the words that the prisoner there were singing in the trains, which it's a song that is based on a Ladino song, and we try to touch that to make it similar to the actually thing that happened. And also we use some happy music in the beginning that is like Greek music. And in the end of the movie, there is the national anthem. The Greek national anthem is the end. You heard it in the brief that we saw. And also there is a very famous Ladino song that you can hear in the end, and it's mostly like talk about emotional feelings and not so much about history and something like that. So it's kind of a mixture between some kind of narration, like a long, I don't know how to say it, like music that holds the story without being very, you can't actually remember what you heard, but it keeps you interesting, and you can feel things through the music, and the music that specified the phases through the movie. So that's about it.
Well, thanks for including that element. It's so rich and powerful, and again, a tribute to the continuity. Several people in the chat have referenced the intention, anyway, of Dr. Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, to create a museum, and obviously the ironies of history that someone who comes from this community becomes one of the influencing for good forces in the world with the Pfizer vaccine at a later date is something that I think will not be lost on historians and others. Yigal, I'm going to give you the last word. Just we have so many people asking about how to access the film, how to share this with other communities, etc. I know we put into the chat some of the specifics, but could you just briefly share, a way for the audience to stay connected?
Sure. So basically, there's a website right now that's in construction. And I would say that in approximately 1 month to 2 months from now, it will be ready. And the film was translated to 5 languages besides English. So it will be available. And basically, if you're interested in seeing the full film, just please write to me to this request to my email, heroesofsalonika@gmail.com. And in a short while, when the website will be up, I will gladly respond to anybody, to any inquiry in general, and anybody who wants to view the film will be able to see it in the near future. I just want to add that Tom Barkaya and me have been working the last 2 years on a new film project on the Holocaust. This will be my last film project on the Holocaust. It's absolutely a one-of-a-kind unique story about the largest organized resistance movement in Europe that was in Hungary. And if anybody would be interested in details about that, or perhaps helping us and supporting us, I would welcome, and it would be very much appreciated. You can write to me also to my email. So thank you so much, for participating in this webinar and for your interest in our film.
Thank you, Yigal. Thank you to Saul and Tom and Professor Greif. Really, the love that is being shared about your film, about this project, is really I feel, as each year, when you think about Yom HaShoah and you think about how do you approach it on even a personal level, to really sort of allow yourself to go to a place of such deep sorrow and to learn from that history. Certainly your project has contributed to that in a really unique way, and we're so grateful for that effort and for your sharing it with all of us today. So for any of you that are new to our audience today, you should know that our programming always aims to share inspiring stories from Israel and around the world. This coming weekend on Sunday, we want to invite you back for the music lovers to hear a live over Zoom a cappella concert that's going to be performed as sort of a sneak preview for what will be an actual tour in Israel for the first time of the Harvard Crocodillos. That's a college a cappella group that will be singing. AIFL is so proud to be holding the hands, waiting for the opportunity to bring them live for the first time. They've traveled all over the world. This will be a first-time trip to Israel that we've been organizing, and you get the first opportunity to hear them and see them next Sunday. We hope you'll join us. And a week from Sunday, on what's celebrated as Mother's Day on May 8th, we hope you'll join us for a chocolate lovers episode. Israel, by definition, is the land of chocolate, not milk and honey, land of chocolate and honey. And so we're going to be celebrating that. Bring your mother, bring some chocolate. Everyone, thanks for being with us today. Be safe. Shalom.